Hi and welcome back to the job hunting video tutorial. Now we are coming to the topic number 7, and well, once again it's my favorite. They're all my favorites. So now we will talk about the interview. And when you think about it, there are only 2 types of interviews for your job. The one is interview where you go and actually talk about the work that needs to be done. And number 2 is the one you don't. And if you follow our advices, make sure that the interview you are going to, that you will be discussing the work that needs to be done.
Job interviews are like a strange kind of theater that no one seems to know the rules to unless they've been to that kind of theater before. A lot of questions are asked. A lot of these questions that are asked in job interviews are questions that maybe some elite company formed in their job interviews and they knew the reason why they asked those questions, but then they became a fad and then everybody asked the questions and the people who are asking the questions don't know why they're asking the questions. It can be pretty wild. But like Franz said, you are always looking in a job interview to turn the conversation back towards something. And what you want to turn it towards is the contribution you can make. What does the job really need? How you could fit in. A lot of other things are just distractions, potential distractions in which you will lose tons of time trying to explain something that's really not helping at all.
Well, let me give you an ideal scenario. You come, you sit down, and people on the other side say, well, why don't you tell us something about yourself? You know, that's like
Right.
introduction always.
Right.
And you say, well, I would like to. If you
I was born in.
No, you would say I was born. Now we're talking about the ideal scenario.
The ideal scenario.
And you say, I think I'm an ideal person for that work because, and then you say, I think that the issues or challenges or obstacles in that department, in that company are such, such, and such. This is how I would challenge them on this way. This is what I did before. And then you would tell the story where we again have the resolution with the results.
Which
and
can be a story from you being a volunteer or some project in school. It doesn't, if this is your first job, it can be small.
And then immediately you can show to the people on the other side, especially to the manager who is supposed to hire, that he or she has a go-getter and somebody who understands the problems, understands their needs, and can get things done. Mm-hmm. Well, can I say something? Well, if there is no manager there, only let's say HR experts or from maybe outsource psychologists, well, then you're in big problem. And probably you haven't done step number 5.
Right, but you can maybe pass through the interview if you answer their questions, if you think carefully. But it's a very different environment when you're in with actual workers in the company who you would potentially be working with in the job. Then you want to try and focus back as much as you can on reality. I'd like to talk a little bit about the behavioral questions aspect of this. You're going to be asked questions you never heard before. Several things you can do to help yourself in this. One is look up common interview questions on the internet so that you hear about these kinds of things. Tell me about yourself. What is your greatest strength and your greatest weakness? Tell me about a success and a failure that you've experienced. These are all questions that don't have right or wrong answers. It's more, there's a curiosity about how you are going to try to respond. So a couple of things that are helpful. One is have 3 or 4 core stories you're used to telling of experiences you went through. They were challenging, where there was an obstacle, where you managed to get past the obstacle, where you saw some success, you brought some results. And probably if you have 3 or 4 of those stories pretty clear in your head, you'll be able to figure out which one of them to kind of bring up in the situation. Another aspect is that when you were given these kinds of questions, it is a very powerful thing in life to have self-understanding that is not arrogant, but is also not kind of that you look down on yourself, but that you know who you are and what is particular about your character, about your gifts, about your orientation in life. So it can be very helpful if you have the chance to go and look online maybe and find something like Myers-Briggs personality test or the DISC personality test. Try and fill something like that out. Look at the language it gives you. The important thing about those kinds of assessments is they give you neutral language that describes who you are. I am what is called a conscientious person. That's savjestan in Croatian. that's kind of my personality, how it comes out on those tests. So I know when I'm speaking to someone and they tell me about yourself, I say, I am good at details. I am happy to work and focus on something for a long amount of time, but I know it's a challenge for me to assert myself, to become, to take control of a situation. But I can tell you a story about how I've learned that over the years. So learn about discover yourself, learn some language that helps you describe yourself. Use neutral language to describe that as much as possible. I know the positive side, I know the negative side. I work in my strengths. I know how to cover my weaknesses. If you have 3 or 4 stories and some self-understanding, it makes a huge impression in jobs. I can't tell you how many times in those interviews I would ask, tell me what your greatest strength and your greatest weakness is. And a 22-year-old person would say to me, my greatest strength is that I work too hard, and my greatest weakness is I don't know when to quit. And that's cute, but it discloses nothing helpful about a person to actually kind of think, do I really want to work with this person or not?
Do you know how it's called?
What?
Well, it's called interviewitis. So it's like a disease. Like you get it by mosquito bite, where you actually practice the answers to the common questions.
Right.
But in the interview where you have to use those answers, I would say that you don't have a control over that interview. You already gave up control.
Right.
One of the best advice I have ever read about the interviews, about the job interviews is, don't come to an interview like it's a job interview. Come prepared like it's Monday morning and you're already working there. You're an insider and there's a manager who's going to hire you, but that's your manager and you have to solve the problem. Come there prepared and then start talking about the work.
Right.
Because the question, what book would you take to a deserted island? Well, it doesn't have a right answer.
No.
But that's not the question about the work that needs to be done. It's the question about your traits and your values and your thinking. So take control of the interview and start talking about the work that needs to be done.
Asking questions, right? I mean, reflecting. If you in an interview are assertive enough that you get a question, you give a short answer to the question, but then you turn it around and you ask a question yourself of the manager, well, help me understand, what are the challenges here? That's very surprising. I don't think it's overly aggressive. I think most people respond pretty positively if you're just showing your interest and your curiosity and your engagement with the work and what they do.
But then you have to do the job analysis.
Yeah, right? You have to come into it knowing how to answer those kooky questions. You have your 3 or 4 top answers, but you also have your 3 or 4 top questions of things you really are like, I'm really curious how in the world you've been able to navigate the challenges in your industry in the past couple of years. It's been so hard. I'd really like to understand that. You're going to blow people away with those kind of questions.
Yeah, definitely. Do you want to say something to people for the end? Or do we just want to invite them to contact us? Like form the teams, like 20, 30 students, 40, and we will gladly come and just like give you 1-day seminar.
Yes, we are very open to kind of doing this in live and in person, getting you in groups, sitting down, working through your own CVs, doing practice mock interviews where we'll give you feedback. There are a lot of things way beyond just listening to a video, which can be very helpful. You can form groups with your friends as well to try and kind of practice a lot of these things. Don't be alone. Don't get stuck. Don't be the guy in his underwear at 12 o'clock every day who's just gotten out of bed. Get out there, be assertive, learn, volunteer, take risks. Nothing is going to happen to you except for maybe somebody kind of insults you a little bit, and that's not the worst thing in life.
Yeah, I would just like to say, who's responsible for your career?
I am.
And who's responsible for my career?
You are.
So guys, who is responsible for your career? Thank you very much.